So much for them again.
It's a pleasure to be here in this beautiful yoga studio this evening with all of you. And I think it'll be good if I can stand and speak. You know, I like looking at people when I speak to them.
Or do you want me to take away the chair?
No,
Or
let
is
it
it
be
okay?
there. If I feel very tired, sort of collapse. So let me start with a chant, as she said. Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityurma amritam gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. I hope all of you can hear me. Those at the back, can you hear me? Divya, can you hear me? Okay. We are here at this yoga studio, and it's very appropriate that we are here today. It all began here in America and in the West with this person, Swami Vivekananda. Some of you may have read in the Wall Street Journal a few years ago, there was an article, the man who brought yoga to the West, and that was Swami Vivekananda. From last year onwards, we have been celebrating the International Day of Yoga on the summer equinox, I think, on June 21st. And that's when this article was published, that where are the roots of yoga? In fact, if you read the book American Veda by Philip Goldberg, there he traces the entry and the spread and the influence of Indian philosophy, Indian thought in America and the West, and he traces it back. He begins the book with Swami Vivekananda. So he traces the influence of Indian thought in world thought, especially in America here and in American culture. He starts with Swami Vivekananda. And for those of you who are new to this picture is of Sri Ramakrishna, his spiritual master, who is regarded as, if not the greatest, certainly one of the greatest spiritual masters of the modern time in India. And then Ma Sharada Devi, whom we call the Holy Mother. She was Sri Ramakrishna's wife, but she's not up there because she was his wife. She is regarded as an equally great saint and spiritual teacher in her own light. I'm saying equally great, but actually if you go to the main monastery in near the river, on the river Ganges near Calcutta, where I've come from, there is a temple to her and there's a much bigger temple to him. And there are more people going all the time to her temple than to his temple. So that is Ma Sharada, Sri Ramakrishna, and his disciple Swami Vivekananda. That Vedanta is here today, that yoga is here today, that I am standing and we are talking about Upanishads here today is to a great extent due to his work. He came here in 1893, the World Parliament of Religions, to talk about Vedanta. Vedanta is the philosophy based on the Upanishads. Since we are standing in the yoga studio here, where you learn about asanas and pranayama, different kinds of yoga practices, which are mainly hatha yoga practices, but it's also an entry into the very profound philosophy of the Upanishads. Vedanta and Upanishads are synonymous. In fact, one of the definitions of Vedanta we gave when we teach the Vedanta is Vedanta Nama Upanishad Pramanam in Sanskrit. What does that mean? Vedanta is verily the spiritual knowledge found in the Upanishads. So the Upanishads and Vedanta are the same. What are the Upanishads? The Upanishads are the highest spiritual teachings found in the most ancient scriptures of the Hindus, the Vedas. The Vedas are the ancient scriptures of the Hindus, dated back at least to 6,000 years, and probably much more in oral transmission. And in them, a part of them, are the Upanishads, where you find the highest teachings, the highest spiritual teachings. And in fact, the Upanishads form the spiritual, the philosophical core of Hinduism. All of Hinduism can in some form or the other be traced back to the Upanishads. An incredible set of texts. There are several of them, we'll talk about that. What I'll do this evening is, I'm going to give some general introductory remarks about the Upanishads, and then we will take a look at the teaching itself, at the central teaching, and try to see what they are talking about. At least at the end of the talk, the takeaway from the talk will be a general idea about the Upanishads, but more importantly, the central teaching of the Upanishads. We should know what the central teaching is by the end of the talk. And if we follow very, very carefully, maybe even become enlightened. I'm not promising that. So the second part of the talk will be an actual guided practice into the philosophy of the Upanishads, a philosophical inquiry to see who we really are. And I'd invite you to follow that very carefully. But first, a few words about the Upanishads. As I said, the Vedanta is based on the Upanishads, and there are many of these Upanishads at the end of the Vedas. I found it scattered throughout the Vedas, sometimes towards the end of the Vedas. And these Upanishads are, we talk about 10 principal Upanishads, major Upanishads, and a host of other Upanishads. There is a verse which you memorize when you study the Upanishads. There's a verse which you memorize to recite the names of the 10 principal Upanishads. And the verse goes something like this. Isha kena katha prashna mundamandukya titirihi aitareyam cha chandogyam brihad aranyakam tatha. These are, it may sound like, I won't say Greek and Latin, sound like Sanskrit, but because it is. But it's just a list of names of the 10 major Upanishads. What are those 10 Upanishads? The Isha Upanishad, Kena Upanishad, Katha Upanishad, Prashna Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad, Aitareya Upanishad, the Chandogya Upanishad, and the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So these are the 10 major Upanishads. Who decided which are the 10 major Upanishads? It's just because about 1400 years ago, this is India, so whenever you talk about old, you mean really, really old. You talk in thousands of years. I remember we as a group of young monks were taken on a tour of some old temples in Bengal. In Bengal, the temples are not particularly old. Somebody was showing us a particular temple and saying, this is the oldest temple we have got in Bengal, the particular province of India I come from. And it's about 600 years old. And I could see those monks who had come from other parts of India, especially the south of India. They were smiling. For them, 600 years is not old at all. For them, if you go back 1,000 years, that you're beginning to talk now. So there are temples in the south of India which are more than 1,000 years old. Now, about 14 or 1500 years ago, there was this great Indian philosopher, Shankaracharya, who selected 10 of the Upanishads to write elaborate commentaries. And we are grateful to him that he did that, because these Upanishads are so old, the language is sometimes so archaic, it's difficult in some cases to make out what they are saying. It's only because he has written those commentaries again in Sanskrit, but now we understand how profound these teachings are. And he selected these 10 Upanishads. So that's why they are called 10 major Upanishads, but there are many others. You come across a list of 108 Upanishads in one of the Upanishads themselves, in the Muktika Upanishad, a minor Upanishad. You come across a list of 108 Upanishads. There, I can't resist telling the story. And that's another thing you have to be ready with Indian philosophy. There are stories and stories within stories and stories within stories within stories. And somebody said, whenever you start the Puranas, a class of Indian scriptures, they start at the beginning. And by the beginning, they mean really the beginning. They start with the beginning of the universe. Every story starts with the creation of the universe. In the Muktika Upanishad, the story goes like this. The great incarnation of God, Rama, who is God himself, and his great devotee, Hanuman. Now, Hanuman asks Rama, how does one get enlightened? One gets moksha, enlightenment. And Rama says, you just read one Upanishad. What is that Upanishad? He says it's the Mandukya Upanishad. Mandukyam ekameva alam. The Mandukya alone is sufficient. Mumukshunam vimuktai. For the liberation, for the enlightenment of those who want enlightenment. Mandukya Upanishad is alone is sufficient. And the Mandukya is actually the smallest of the Upanishads. It's just a few mantras. Just a few mantras. Mandukya Upanishad itself, without the Karika. So that the smallest Upanishad is very small. You can just write it down in half a page, the Mandukya Upanishad. And the biggest of the Upanishad, the Brihadaranyaka, is a voluminous. It's really big. So the Upanishads in length, these texts are of all sizes. Now I was saying they're profound. Schopenhauer, the great German philosopher, he was one of the first Western philosophers to read the Upanishads. And that story in itself is fascinating. I won't go into that because then there's no end to it. You won't be going home before 11 o'clock in that case. But suffice it to say that a great Mughal prince, Dara Shukla, he was interested in not only Islam, but he was interested in Hinduism. And he got the Upanishads translated from Sanskrit, along with the commentaries, into Persian. And this Persian version of the Upanishads was called Upanishads. And this was a young French Indologist, Anquetil Duperron, who was 21 years old when he came to India to search for ancient texts. And he got hold of this book, the Upanishads. And he brought it back to France, among other texts, and he translated them into Latin. And this original Sanskrit, translated into Persian, translated into Latin, came into the hands of, he published it, hands of this German philosopher, Schopenhauer. And he is on record as having said that I consider that there is no study in the world as edifying as the study of this Upanishad, this text, except perhaps the originals. They have been the solace of my life, and they shall be the solace of my death. And it seems, I was reading his life, he would never go to sleep after that without reading a few pages of the Upanishads. And he had this, his little dog, he named the little dog Atma, which in Upanishad means our real self. And so they are profound. They are, I have not come across any other body of literature quite like that. Incredible. Incredible. We shall see a little bit of that today. But first, in general, what do the Upanishads deal with? They deal with the most profound questions of life. Is there any ultimate reality in this universe? Call it God or whatever. Who am I? Who are we? What is the purpose of life? Is enlightenment, salvation, nirvana, moksha, whatever you call it, is it possible? What is it like? What is the purpose of this entire universe? What's the purpose of this game, which we are in the midst of? The greatest questions, the fundamental questions of life. And all of us, in every civilization, in every time, people have asked these questions. And all of us, we have asked these questions. Everybody, in fact, asks these questions, especially when we are teenagers. But then we sort of grow. The sadness is we grow out of these questions. The business of living catches up with us, and we grow out of these questions. I was joking. I was telling somebody that if you do not grow out of these questions, you just hold on to these questions, you either become a monk or you become a philosopher. And Schopenhauer had an interesting point about that. He used to say that there are two kinds of philosophers. A genuine philosopher and an academic philosopher. He says a genuine philosopher is a person who is puzzled by life, who looks at life and has these big questions. And an academic philosopher, according to him, is one who is puzzled by his books. But to be fair, among the academic philosophers, many of them are genuine philosophers, and many of them came to academic philosophy because they had these questions. And when we are practicing yoga, we get another chance to ask these questions all over again. These Upanishads are about these profound questions. And in almost all of these Upanishads, you find a dialogue, which reminds you of the Socratic dialogues, you know. There's a person comes to a spiritual master and asks these questions. Let's look at some of these questions, and I will recite to you the original Sanskrit. It sounds beautiful. Imagine something that was composed, inspired, recited 60 centuries ago, 6,000 years ago, on the bank of the Ganges or the Saraswati River in India. This very language. In the Mundaka Upanishad, we find a student coming to the spiritual master and asking this question. It goes like this. The Sanskrit goes like this. Shaunako havai mahashalo angirasam vidivadupasannappapracha. Shaunaka, a well-to-do person, comes to the spiritual master Angiras and asks a question. It's mentioned that he comes to the master in the proper prescribed manner. The proper prescribed manner in India is you go down and bow down to the master and make an offering, and after the salutations you ask your question. What was the question? Kasmin no bhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavati iti. Sir, O holy sir, what is that by knowing which I can know everything? What an interesting question to ask. Tell me that by knowing which I can know everything. In another Upanishad, we find a father asking his son, who's back from university. He finds the son has become arrogant. It seems he knows everything. And what does the old man know anyway? So he's maybe back from an Ivy League university at that time. And the father sees that the guy is this boy, his name is Shwetaketu. Shwetaketu has become proud and arrogant. So the father asks him, do you know that by which everything is known? Did your teachers teach you that? By knowing which everything is known? Same question. Same question. Eka vijnanena sarvam vijnatam. By one knowledge, everything is known. And Shankaracharya's humor is there. You know, that the boy says, no, they didn't teach me. I don't even know that such knowledge is possible. They didn't teach me. Why don't you teach me? He tells his father. And the commentator, Shankaracharya, humorously adds there that he's scared of being sent back to college again. So he says, why don't you tell me? In other places, there's this beautiful story about a little boy who went to meet death. The boy's name is Nachiketa. It's a favorite story in India. So he goes to, a little boy, he's maybe 9 or 10 years old. He goes to meet Yama, the Lord of Death. And he goes there, and Yama is pleased with him and grants him boons. You can ask me for 3 boons, any three things. And the final boon is the point. In the Katha Upanishad you find the third thing he asks this little boy, the final thing he asks is, okay, I should tell you the first and second. Shouldn't leave you hanging. It's not a good way to tell a story. Basically, his dad was mad at him. The little boy's dad was annoyed with him and said something like, today here you would say, oh, go to hell, don't bother me. So, more or less he said that. Go to death. Oh, just go to death. And this being a story, he really goes to death, to the house of death. And he confronts death, and he asks these 3 boons. Death gives him 3 boons, the little boy. So the first thing he asked was, because he was a little boy, first thing he asked was like a very intelligent little boy, he asks, when I go back home, my dad shouldn't be mad at me anymore, he should love me. That's so cute, you know. You can see the psychology of the little boy. And it's so intelligent too. Nobody ever goes back from death. And this boy, he doesn't say, I should go back to life again. He assumes it. I'm going back. So when I go back, my dad should be happy with me. He should love me. So we can imagine death smiling sort of touched, by the bar and says, okay, granted. And the second boon is, there was conventional religion in those days where fire sacrifices. So the little boy says, I see my dad doing these fire sacrifices, teach me the best fire sacrifice there is. And so the Lord of Death teaches him that. But the third question is the Upanishad. What is the secret of death? What lies beyond death? Is there something within us which does not die? Some people say there is, some people say there is not. Tell me the truth. And then the answer starts. So that's another question. In another Upanishad, Kena Upanishad, you find the same question in a very different way. Instead of saying, tell me one thing by which I know everything, the question is, how do I think? By what light within are my thoughts lit up? What inspires my words? How do I speak? How do I see? How do I hear? He's not asking for an explanation of physiology. How does the visual system work? How does an auditory system work? He's asking for one answer. What is that one thing which gives me the conscious first-person experience of seeing, of hearing? We are just now in this 21st century beginning to understand this question. In consciousness studies, if you have heard of the hard problem of consciousness, the problem of qualia, how do we get first-person experience? How do the brains work and what neurons fire and what activity is going on? That's supposed to be the so-called easy problem of consciousness. But the hard problem of consciousness is, how does all this physical activity, biochemical activity, neurological activity, translate into seeing the color red? Right? How do we taste, see, hear? How do we have the conscious experience which is our life? And thousands of years ago the question is being asked. The Upanishad starts with this question. Kene shitam padati preshitam mana kena prana prathama preti yukta kene shitam vacham imam vadanti chakshu shrotram kaudeva yunakti. What light shines in my thoughts? I'm aware of my thoughts. By what light are my words inspired? By what light am I able to see, hear, smell, touch? Our conscious life, our whole lives. He's basically asking about what? He's asking about consciousness. The question is about consciousness, the real nature of consciousness. He calls it, what bright being within me shines through my senses and my mind? That's the question. I mean, one can only marvel at the depth and the sophistication of these questions. So, you have this range of questions. And what about the answer? Let me give you the answer in brief, and then we will go into the second part of the presentation where I'll guide you through this process. Come. Yeah. The answer goes like this. I'll quote from one of the Upanishads where the answer is found to be, let me quote from the Upanishad. It was a favorite with Swami Vivekananda when he came to this country. He would often chant the original Sanskrit, which I shall chant for you and then translate. What is the answer to these questions? By knowing what one thing, one knows everything. What is the light within me which shines through all my thoughts and feelings? The answer goes like this. Shrinvantu vishve amritasya putraha aye dhamani divyani tastu vedaham purusham mahantam aditya varnam tamasah parastat tameva viditva atimrityumeti nanyah pantha vidyate ayanaya. What does that mean? It's simple Sanskrit but very profound and poetic. It means, listen, ye children of immortal bliss. So the teacher is addressing all of us, all of humanity, as children of immortal bliss. Even those who dwell in higher spheres, the gods who dwell in heavens, you listen to, because what I'm going to say, you do not know. This highest teaching of the Upanishads. What is that? Vedaham Purusham Mahantam. I have realized that infinite being. Purusham Mahantam, infinite being. I have realized this infinite being. I have known that infinite being. What kind of infinite being? Aditya Varnam, blazing forth with a light like the sun. Not a material light like the sun, not a material light like this, the light of consciousness. Blazing forth. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna gets this experience in beautiful and awesome poetry, it's described as if 1,000 suns rise in the sky together. Not with the material light, would be burnt up. It's the light of consciousness. Tamasa Parasta, beyond all darkness, beyond the darkness of suffering and sorrow and death and limitation, there is some immortal reality which is beyond suffering and sorrow, our human limitations. Okay, suppose you have known such a thing, suppose such a thing exists. What good is it? What good does it do us? By knowing that alone, mortal man becomes immortal. One goes beyond death. One goes beyond suffering. Any other way? Any other way? We have other ways of overcoming suffering. You're sick, you go to the CVS, go to the doctor, assuming you have coverage. If you don't have coverage, there is a job, you can go and earn money. If you're bored, there's a television for you. Somebody said it's the golden age of television. You don't know, Swami, what you are missing. There's so many TV serials for you to see. So, if you're bored, you go to the television or play video games. But none of them are permanent solutions for the human condition. Every one of them has a limitation. They either come to an end and after that you are still dissatisfied, you still want more. Or they do not give you that satisfaction which you wanted from them. When you get it, you finally see this was not worth it. Everything in human life is infected with this problem, except spiritual enlightenment. That's the promise that there is something, an infinite existence. If you realize that, you go beyond the limitations, the human limitations of death, sorrow and suffering. So that's the answer. And all the Upanishads give it in different language. That's one point. But that's just the grand beginning theme. They go to something even greater. Where is this infinite reality? You're talking about an infinite consciousness, an immortal consciousness. Where is it? Where do I find it and how do I find it? And here comes the highest teaching of the Upanishads. If there's nothing you go away from this talk with, just go away with this. The Upanishads say with one voice, that thou art. Where is that infinite reality? Brahman, pure consciousness, whatever. You are that. You just don't know it. You are that. In the Upanishads we find what are called Mahavakyas, the great statements. The great, not in, you get pretty long sentences in Sanskrit. I've seen sentences, one sentence covering a whole page. But these sentences are short sentences, but they are great because they are profound. And each of these great sentences, we take 4 in the Upanishads, from different Upanishads. They all mean the same thing. They all mean the same thing. You are that infinite reality. You are that. In the Chandogya Upanishad you find Tat Tvam Asi. That boy who was arrogant and his father began to teach him that infinite reality. And after teaching him that, he says that there is some infinite reality from which this universe has come, in which the universe exists, into which it disappears finally. We can imagine the boy going, so? Okay, that's great, but so, what does it have to do with me? And the father tells him, Tat Tvamasi Shvetaketu. Oh my boy Shvetaketu, you are that infinite reality. Now he can't go so, because we are now talking about him. What's the most interesting subject for each of us? I myself, the vertical I. Whether we admit it or not, we are infinitely interested in ourselves. And it's bad when it's the small self we are interested in. We see that it's bad. But it points to something interesting. There is something within us which deserves that attention. That thou art Shvetaketu. You are that infinite self which we are talking about. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, we find even more directly, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Brahman, the infinite reality. I am Brahman. People sometimes get shocked. Are you claiming I am God? Brahman is the word for God in Hinduism. Are you seriously saying that you are God? Yes, but not just me. You too, and everybody and everything is. Whatever we see in this life, whatever we experience, is an appearance of that reality. There's a famous Hindu monk who came to USA also. Now he had a brother who had some mental problems, and he was in an asylum in those days. So this monk, he went back to visit his brother, and his brother said, "You say that I am God. I also say that I am God. And people revere you and fall at your feet, and they lock me up. It's so unfair. It's so unfair." Then his brother, the monk, explained to him, "Yeah, when I say I am God, I mean all of us are one with God. Everybody, irrespective of gender or caste or color, not even just human beings. All beings are one with God. We share the same divine essence. We are that. But the mistake you make is you say, I am God, worship me." And they lock you up, of course. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. In the Mandukya Upanishad, the little Upanishad I mentioned, which is the most powerful of the Upanishads, there you find, I am Atma Brahma. This very self is Brahman. Same meaning. That thou art, I am Brahman, this very self is Brahman. They all mean the same thing. And in the Aitareya Upanishad you find Prajnanam Brahma. Consciousness, this consciousness within, right now, this awareness, this sentience which we all experience, if you properly understand this, that is the infinite divine reality, Brahman. So these 4 sentences are called Mahavakyas. All of them mean the same thing, and all of them are the core teaching of the Upanishads. Okay. I think that's good as an advertisement, like an introduction. But shall we look deeper? Let's look deeper. What is this infinite reality, and how am I this infinite reality, and how can I know it, and how can I realize it? If that is the question, and that should be our question, can you show us a little more? Let's see a little more. The Upanishads say that to realize this reality is the purpose of life. Swami Vivekananda, he put it more directly. Each soul is potentially divine. To manifest this reality, to manifest this divinity is the goal of religion. And all religious practices, whether you are meditating, whether you are doing devotional practices, worshipping God, whether you are serving, doing good to others, or whether you are following the path of knowledge. This last one is what we are doing now. The path of knowledge, Jnana Yoga. By any one of these means, or by all of them, you realize the truth that you are Brahman and be free. This is the whole of religion. Books, temples, doctrines, churches, they are all secondary details. The real thing is to realize the divine within ourselves and be free of the sufferings of life. All the spiritual practices, he mentions Jnana Yoga, the path of philosophical inquiry, which is what we shall see today. Bhakti Yoga, the path of love, of devotional worship of God. Raja Yoga, the path of meditation, to which is related the Hatha Yoga that you do in a yoga studio. Raja Yoga is the path of meditation, to which is related the Hatha Yoga, the Ashtanga Yoga, and everything that you do in a yoga studio. He mentions Karma Yoga, the path of service to all beings, worshipping God in all beings through service. All of these paths, they have only one goal. The paths are different, the practices are different. They have only one goal, ultimately to know and realize this infinite reality within, Brahman within. So let's see. This is the second part of the talk. We'll take up any one of these approaches, so any one of the Upanishads. Let me take it up. I thought of taking up the Taittiriya Upanishad, one of the Upanishads. Now from here, you have got to walk with me, because they're going to take us step by step, deep within ourselves, to uncover something we did not know that existed. The divine self within ourselves, that Brahman, infinite existence. So the Upanishad starts, the second chapter of the Upanishad starts like this. Brahma vedapnoti param. The knower of Brahman attains the highest. This statement. What I am going to say from now on till the end is an explanation of this statement. What is the statement? The knower of Brahman attains the highest. If the knower of Brahman attains the highest, we should have three questions. What is this blessed Brahman you are talking about? What is it? Define it. And how do you know Brahman? Second. And what do you mean by the highest? What do I actually get? What happens when I know Brahman? Three questions. And then it proceeds to answer. Tad esha bhyukta satyam jnanam anantam brahma. It is said, question number 1, what is Brahman? It is said, the answer is, Brahman is infinite existence consciousness. Satyam, existence. Jnanam, consciousness. Anantam, infinite. Brahman is infinite existence consciousness. I will not go into the details of this. This does not concern us today. But if you're interested in going deeper into this, I have a talk on YouTube. Just search Defining God on YouTube. You'll get it. The whole talk is about Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahman. This definition of Brahman. It's about that. But now we go to the second question. How do I know that I'm Brahman? We don't have much time, so definition we'll leave it theoretical later on. But let's just realize Brahman right now, before we run out of time. So we will concentrate on the second question. How do I realize Brahman? And the answer given is, Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Paramedhyo Vyoman. What does it mean? It means, hello? It means, who realizes Brahman in the sacred space of his or her own heart. What does that mean, sacred space of the heart? It's very simple. It means you have to realize Brahman as I am Brahman. How do you realize Brahman? Not that this thing is Brahman, or this deity is Brahman, or that light is Brahman, or the universe is Brahman, but you have to realize it as I am Brahman. How do you do that? We'll come to that. But the third question, let me just touch upon it. What does it mean attains the highest? What is the highest? So ashnute sarvan kaman saha brahmana vipashyate. What you attain through this whole process, when you become enlightened, you come to the culmination of all desires. Everything that one could have wanted in life, you get the fulfillment of all desires. You think, oh, I want an Xbox, and I want candy, and I don't want to go to school. If I realize Brahman, do I get all of that? All my lists, Christmas lists, all of that, do I get it at once? No, not in that sense. What it means is, you become one with the universe, with Brahman. You become one with Brahman. In that sense, all desires are culminated, finished there. That's the meaning. That is equal to moksha, nirvana, salvation, whatever you call it. Now, the real point of this presentation, the process. The process starts here. He says, how do I realize that I am Brahman? The Upanishad says, what do you think you are? Let's start with what you think you are. If I ask you, who are you? Most of us will say, why, here I am. This is who I am. This person here. The body. So do you think you're the body? Yeah. You start there. And the Upanishad says, take a look at the body. We think we are the body. But if you take a look at the body, the Upanishad guides us step by step. The body is changing. The body was a little baby, was a young boy, was a teenager, was a young man or woman, middle-aged person, this old person, and that person they are carrying in the coffin to the graveyard. That's the body. And I feel I am the same person who was a kid, I am the same person who was a middle-aged person, I am the same person who is old now. But the kid, middle-aged person and old, it all refers to the aging of the body. Is that not so? This rather elderly lady told me a few weeks ago that, Swami, it's true. I was passing by a window and I saw this old lady in the window looking at me. I thought, who is she? And I realized it's me. When did I get like that? In my mind's eye, I'm still that young girl. So, the body ages, body is subject to change. I don't feel, I am the witness of these changes. I can't be how can you be both unchanging and changing at the same time? The body is at second. The body is an object of my perception. The body is an object of my perception. What does that mean? This shirt is an object of my perception. I am the one who sees the subject. This shirt is an object. I know it. The subject and the object are never the same. Think about it. What you see must be different from your eyes. Is that not so? Tell me one thing that you cannot see with your eyes. The eyes themselves, yes. You can see a picture of your eyes, you can see a reflection of your eyes, but the eyes cannot see themselves directly. The seer and the seen are different. The subject and the object are different entities. You know your body. Just as you know everything here, you know the clothes you are wearing, you know the body also. You can see the body, you can touch the body, you can feel the body. So the body is an object of your knowledge. You are the knower of the body. The knower and the known, the subject and the object, they have to be two different entities. You may be within the body, but you are not the body. You experience the body just like you experience the clothes you are wearing, the seat you are sitting on. Being the knower, the body is the known, you cannot be the body. Okay, this is enough to be going on. There are many, many other reasons. There is no time for that. But they all point out that point that you are not the body. Though you think that you are the body. Okay, you say, well, that sounds reasonable. Then what could I be? The Upanishad says, look deeper. What's more subtle than the body? What's interior to the body? You have this feeling, I'm within the body. Like I put on the clothes, I put on the body. So you have something within the body. Okay, what are you within the body? They speak about prana. They speak about prana. The body, they call it annamaya, made of food. They call the body made of food because it's a transformation of food. What we eat and drink is this body. Somebody called it food rearranged. Food is arranged on your plate. When you eat it, you rearrange the food, and that's the body. Annamaya, the food body. And when we say I am not the body becomes a cover for me, whoever I am. Being a cover, it's called a kosha. Kosha is something that covers. So the body is annamaya kosha, the food sheath. What's deeper than the body? Interior to the body, subtler than the body? You feel it all the time. Breathing. What do you call it in yoga? Prana. Life forces, breathing, our blood pounding through the veins, food being assimilated. When you feel healthy, when you feel sick, when you feel energetic, when you feel tired, it's prana, it's life forces. So am I life? Am I life? Am I the prana? Am I the prana? You can ask that question. The same logic applies there. Does the prana change? Does the prana change? Yeah, it changes. Sometimes I'm hungry, sometimes when I eat I'm satiated, sometimes I feel energetic, sometimes I feel tired. That's true. Sometimes I'm breathing in, sometimes I'm releasing the breath, sometimes I'm holding the breath. The forces of prana flow, they ebb and flow through this body. They are continuously changing. I am the one who was tired, I am the one who was sick, I am the one who is energetic, I am the one who is feeling good now, I'm feeling healthy. Same person who sees the changes of the prana. So the prana changes. Not only that, are we aware of the prana? Of course we are. There is a whole, I don't know if you do it in this yoga studio, there is a whole industry of teaching you mindful breathing. Mindfulness of the breath. Mindfulness of the breath is what? Be aware of your breathing. But what Upanishads will tell you is, it's good to be aware of your breathing. But notice the fact, you are that which is aware of the breath. You are that which is aware of the breath. You are the subject, the breath becomes the object. Hence prana, the life forces, they are the object. You are that which is aware of the prana. You cannot be the same thing. You cannot be the prana. You are something, the prana is an object of your awareness, the prana is changing. Same reasons. Changing because it's an object, you cannot be the prana. You are the witness of the prana, of the changes of the prana. You are something interior to the prana, you are something subtler than the prana. So the prana becomes another sheath, a covering for you. It's called the pranamaya kosha, the sheath of life forces. It's called the sheath of life forces. Pranamaya kosha. What's subtler than the prana? What's interior to the prana? The mind. The Upanishad says the mind. And here we have it. Most educated, grown-up, mature people think of themselves as minds in a body. Most of us, we feel that we are this person in the body. We are this person in the body. As a mind embodied in this physical body. Now, are we the mind? Now you are equipped, you have the techniques. Apply the same techniques. Does the mind change? You say, oh yes it does. All the time. Very fast. Throughout the day. Right now I'm feeling upbeat. Next moment I'm feeling sick. I don't feel good. I'm feeling happy. Next moment I feel irritated. Right now I don't understand. Next moment I understand. So, mind keeps on changing. Memory. Mind includes memory also. Sometimes I can remember, sometimes I can't remember. We say tip of the tongue. I can't remember. So mind changes. I am aware of the changing mind. Is the mind an object of your awareness? We normally do not think that the mind is an object. We identify the mind with the subject. Mind is the subject and the world is the object. But are we not aware of the mind? If you are happy, are you not aware of the feeling of happiness in the mind? If not, who else is? If you are not aware of your own happiness or misery, who else is? I am aware of the happiness in the mind. I am aware of the misery in the mind. Mind is an object of awareness. Mind is continuously changing. Because it is changing, because it's an object of awareness, it can't be me. The mind becomes a sheath. It's called manomaya kosha. The sheath of the mind, manomaya kosha. You are something interior to the mind, subtler than the mind. What is interior to the mind and subtler than the mind? And the Upanishad makes a division here between the mind and the intellect. What is the intellect here? That which we are using right now to understand all of this, hopefully. That faculty we are using now, trying to understand this, that's the intellect. That which understands. Am I the intellect? Many people do get identified with intellect, especially intellectuals. But now you can use the same instruments. Does the intellect change? Of course it does. What I did not understand as a kid, I understood in college. What I did not understand in college, I've understood by growing up. Many of the things I've understood in college, I've forgotten now. The intellect keeps changing. And is the intellect, are you aware of the functioning of the intellect? Yeah, that too. There is something within me which is aware of the functioning of the intellect. The intellect is an object, a very subtle object, but nevertheless an object of my awareness. Intellect is an object of my awareness. I am not the intellect either. I am the witness of the intellect. Now here we have gone pretty far. Most people identify themselves with the mind and intellect. We identify ourselves with this person who is in this body. With a little person, with the personality. But here you are saying, if you are aware of it, if you know it, then it cannot be you. You are the knower of the intellect. Recently I was at a university up north. When I was talking about this, a mathematician, emotionally, he said to me, you know, the professors in our university, in our department, they need to know this. Why? Because they're so, especially in the mathematics department, you're so deeply identified with the intellect. And mathematics is a young man's game. By the time you're 40 or 50, you have done the best part of your life's work. And what happens is, these people are so identified with their powerful intellects, once powerful intellect. Now, as you fall behind, you are not as quick as you used to be. They feel an inferiority complex. They struggle to keep up. You see, there are so many sad tales of once great teachers and researchers who are writing papers which are now worthless. And they feel this terrible thing that we are being left behind. We are far behind the field which we once dominated. Now, because I am identified with the intellect, I suffer. I think I am falling apart. I think there's something wrong with me. No. It's an instrument. It's a car which I used. It's become old. It doesn't work so well. That's all. You could relax. Yeah, you could relax. Imagine the relief of knowing that nothing is wrong with you. It's just this equipment called the intellect which is slowing down, which happens to everybody. I could tell you more about this, but anyway, the researcher was so emotional about it. It would save so much emotional pain to these people. I am not the intellect either. The intellect is a sheath. It's something that covers me. In Sanskrit, Vijnanamaya Kosha. Vijnanamaya Kosha. I am something interior to the intellect, subtler than the intellect. We are getting into really subtle realms now. Remember, at each of these stages, we are expected to understand what they are saying, we are expected to get it, and we are expected to notice it. That yes, it's a fact. Not just understand it as philosophy. When you say, is the table observed? I said, yeah. Is it theory? No, it's a fact. I'm observing the table. In the same way, I've observed the body. Is the body observed? Yeah. Yes, it is. Is it a fact or is it philosophy, theory or abstraction? It's a fact. The Upanishad is just repeating the facts of life to us, bringing in to notice something we do not notice otherwise. So at every step, that the intellect is an object of my awareness, is a fact right now, whether you are a Vedanta follower or not, only we do not notice it. Vedanta, Upanishad just asks us to notice it. It's not you. It's a covering. In fact, by now, whatever we regarded as ourselves, this body and our memories and our thoughts and our desires and this personality we call ourselves, all of this has become a covering. We are something deeper than that. And the Upanishad goes on to say there is another fact of our experience which is deeper than that. What? Every day in the night we have an experience where the body shuts down. When the body shuts down, we go to sleep, we dream in the mind. But when the mind shuts down, we have what is called dreamless sleep, deep sleep. In deep sleep, what's your experience or my experience? We'll normally say, oh, I do not experience anything. I experience nothing in sleep. I do not have any experience in sleep. The Upanishad tells you, it's not that you do not have any experience in sleep. You have the experience of nothingness in deep sleep. You have the experience of absence in deep sleep. Come. If you have no objection to sitting on the floor, come. The Upanishad says, deep sleep is an experience. It's not the absence of experience. Rather, it's the experience of absence. Deep sleep is the experience of absence. When you experience that blankness, that darkness in deep sleep, that blankness, that darkness, that is called the Anandamaya. It's a blissful state. You say ignorance is bliss. So deep sleep is supposed to be a blissful state. And that is also experienced. If you are the experiencer of that, you cannot be that blankness. You cannot be that. You are the experiencer of that also. Now, that is called the Anandamaya Kosha, the fifth layer, the most interior-most layer. So now we have 5 layers. The body, Annamaya Kosha, the food sheet. The prana, the life forces, Pranamaya Kosha. The mind, emotions, ideas, memories, Manomaya Kosha. The intellect, which is doing all this thinking, Vijnanamaya Kosha. And the deep sleep, darkness, beyond all of this, Anandamaya Kosha. And the Upanishad says, you are none of them because they are all koshas. And now we are waiting. Okay, now you're going to tell me who I am. You're going to show me this Brahman, infinite consciousness. And the Upanishad pulls a trick on us. The Upanishad keeps quiet. We expect like the Russian nested dolls, pulling out one after the other. Now you're going to pull out Brahman or the Atman or the pure self and show, here you are. But the Upanishad doesn't do anything. It just keeps quiet. What does that mean? Our first reaction at this point is, so there is no such thing. There is no ultimate self. There is nothing. Is it just zero, blank, shunyam, the void? The Upanishad says at that point, Asad Brahma iti vedashe asanneva sabhavati. If you think that there is no Brahman, no infinite consciousness, no consciousness within, no reality within, then you wouldn't exist. But you do exist. And yet you are not these 5 sheets. Then who are you? Then who are you? At this point, I must tell the story of the 10 friends who crossed the river to understand this point. 10 is an old story in India. 10 friends crossed a river, and when they had crossed the river, they thought, have we all crossed or did somebody drown? Let's count. So one of them, he counted the others. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh my God, can't be right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh my God, the 10th person is drowned. The other said, you're doing it wrong. Let me count. And the person also counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10th person is drowned. And they started crying and wailing until a wise man passed by and he said, why are you crying? Sir, our friend is drowned. We were 10 and now we are 9. And that person must have counted and seen they were 10. How do you know that you are 9? We counted. Then that wise person says to them, relax, the 10th person is alive. That's what the spiritual master comes and tells us. You are infinite existence, consciousness, bliss. And like those persons will say, how? We counted, we can't find it. We can't find the 10th person. Relax, I'll show you the 10th person. One of you count. We tried. Just do it, just humor me. So that person starts counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the spiritual master comes and the wise man takes his hand and turns it towards him and says, thou art the 10th. Dashamastvamasi, thou art the 10th. And this person goes, oh, I get it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh my God, the 10th person has been found. And the others say, show me, let me do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, wow. And they are all happy. They are all enlightened now. We are laughing at them, but we are doing exactly the same thing. Follow me now. This is the point of the whole presentation. Let's see if we get enlightened. The 5 sheets. Don't follow me just by intellect. Notice. Just notice. It's right here, right now. Just notice this. Sheath of the body. 1. Sheath of the prana, breathing in and out. Notice. 2. Sheath of the mind, thinking, feeling, remembering. 3. Sheath of the intellect, which I'm using now. 4. The blankness in deep sleep, where everything is shut down. 5. And the one which is doing all this counting. What is that? If you answer, you haven't got it. If you don't answer and your face is shining like his, you got it. Yeah. Just stay with that. We have really, I could go on, there's more to say about this. In one of the Vedanta texts, Panchadashi, is a very powerful text of the Vedanta, where the teacher uses this method. The student says, but sir, other than the 5 sheets, nothing else is seen. Where is this Atman of yours? And the teacher answers, the Atman is not seen because it's not an object, not because it does not exist. Appreciate the answer. The problem here, the only reason why we are not able to appreciate this, not able to realize it, not able to become enlightened, the only reason is we are looking for an object. What was the problem with the person who counted 9 people and couldn't find the 10th one? You will say, he didn't count himself. But I'll ask you, follow this carefully. Why did he not count himself? His problem is our problem. Why did he not count himself? What was he looking for? What was he doing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And he was looking for? 10th outside of him. He found 9 and he wanted one more 10th. Which is exactly what we are doing when we go body, prana, mind, intellect, deep sleep, and we just end up with the blankness of deep sleep. I remember the first time I heard this, I was a novice, walking with this very strange old monk. He's dead now, but very strange. I don't know whether he was enlightened or not, but he was thought to be crazy. I was walking with this old monk, and I was a newcomer. And he was telling me this. I didn't know he was putting me through this process. He was telling me this. So beyond the body and the mind, and what do you feel? I said, if you think like that, I was trying to see what he was saying. Just a blankness. And I still remember, he whirled at me, grabbed my arm with big shining eyes, and he had a stutter. And he said, yes, yes, beyond that darkness, the light beyond that darkness, get that. That's it. I don't know what he meant. I just stared at him sort of. That darkness, the light beyond the darkness, the problem with me is I'm looking for a light beyond the darkness. I am the light behind the darkness. In what light is all this being counted? In what light are you now seeing? In what light are you hearing this? In what light do you experience your life? That was the question of the Kena Upanishad. You are that. When you realize you are that, you will realize every problem is in the world, in the body, in the mind, in the prana. There is no problem in that. Every change, birth and death, success and failure, honor and dishonor, insult and praise, all of that at the level of the body and the mind. Not in that. Every difference, that we are different at the level of the body, at the level of the mind. Not in that. In that we are all one. Vedanta shows us we are actually one being. All of us. Not just equal. Not just same. We are actually virtually identical. We are one thing itself. And that's the idea of God that Vedanta has. Krishna is asked in the 13th chapter of the Gita. This is all very fine. 5 koshas and consciousness and everything. But what about God? You're talking about religion. Where is God in all of this? And Krishna says to Arjuna, Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. O Arjuna, know me to be that one consciousness in all beings. One light in all beings. I could go on, but I think if you have questions, if you're not enlightened yet. So any questions about the Upanishads, Vedanta, about this process? This process, by the way, is called Pancha Kosha Viveka, the analysis of the 5 states, the 5 sheets. 5 sheets. This is one way. This is just one method. There are other methods. In fact, the most powerful method I've left out today because that's really powerful stuff. That is Mandukya Upanishad, the little Upanishad which Rama told Hanuman about. That's the method of the three states of consciousness. Waking, dreaming and deep sleep. Where you analyze that and you come upon yourself. Questions?
It's the same as Ramana experience, right?
Who am I?
That's where he comes up.
Ramana Maharshi?
Yes.
Who am I experience? The quest, who am I, is the quest of the Upanishads. There is no, there's a question there.
Oh, you were going,
I was just saying that there is no question of race here, no question of religion here, no question. You can be an atheist, you can be a Christian, a Buddhist, whatever, Hindu. It applies to everybody. They're not talking about believing this or believing that. In fact, they say you must not believe, you must see. Yeah. There was a question, you had a question first, then I'll come to you.
I'm going to try to ask this in the best way I can.
I'll use the chair now, thank you.
So, when one sees or when one recognizes and cannot speak of that which cannot be perceived, there is talk that God can be seen in form, and I know in that place that which cannot be perceived of who we truly are, that there is this peace, this joy, this unchanging peace that it's hard to put in words sometimes. My question is, and I know that when someone goes about the world, or at least this is what's been revealed to me, is when someone goes about the world and then they apply doing things in the physical world with that essence of that bliss, that peace, that joy. They do acts of kindness and they stay true to that. There's beautiful, in-depth type of things that kind of reveal where love is felt more deeply, where you just you hold the chest a little bit more, like whoa. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, I'm confused on whether or not like when I meditate, I go into this place where I just be with that peace, that grace, but I block everything else out. And I don't know if I should be open to receive objects or images in my mind, because I kind of tune all those things out to be with that. And I don't know if I'm at this place where I need to be open to just receive and know that I'm who I am that. I know that objects that we're infused in that, but that's not who we truly are. That's what's being perceived. So my question is do I become open to that, or do I tune it out?
Right. It's a beautiful question. And you, brother, you know what you're speaking of, but what I'll tell you, listen carefully. It's a perfect question to ask at this end of this talk, because it takes you to the next step. If we get what we were talking about right now, and stay there, after some time we'll come to this question. Now, in spiritual life, you must not only go away, you must come back to it. Go into the depths of your own heart, into the reality within, and then come back to it. Because the mind is still there, the body is still there, the world is still there. Remember, Swami Vivekananda defined religion not as knowing the divinity within. What did he define it as? As manifesting the divinity within. He said, my mission in life can be put in a few words. It is to preach unto humanity their inner divinity, and how to make it manifest in every movement of life. Not just remain there and tune out life, but again come back to life, into this world, and You're not coming back from that into this world, rather you're coming back into this world as that. Right? You are that light now shining through the mind and the intellect and the body and the prana, and now you act. Now you act not in ignorance, but as one who knows. You know that immortal, changeless place within yourself. And don't say, I have an immortal, changeless place within myself, but the rest of it is a lot of troubles are there. You are that immortal, changeless place. So you have no trouble. And then you manifest through your life, through your thoughts, through your speech, so the divinity shines forth. Sri Ramakrishna gave a beautiful example. He once went to meet this devotee, Keshav Chandra Sen, who was the leader of a reform school of Hinduism called Brahmo Samaj. And Keshav Sen and his followers, they were just going to take a bath in the pond there. So they were entering the pond, and Ramakrishna came in front of them, and he said something very strange. He said, look, his tail has dropped off. The others burst into laughter. What does he mean? That sounds so funny. His tail has dropped off. What does it mean, tail has dropped off? But Keshav said, no, when he has said it, there is some deeper meaning to this. And they asked him, and he said, a tadpole, when it swims in water, it is a little tail. When the tail drops off and the tadpole becomes a frog, it can stay in the water, it can stay on land. And Sri Ramakrishna said, a mature spiritual seeker now can stay immersed in existence, consciousness, bliss, Satchidananda, or can come back to samsara and function beautifully when your tail has dropped off. Otherwise, this dichotomy remains. As Jack Cornfield in one of his books, he writes, after the ecstasy, the laundry. Yes, that's still there. You have to deal with your life. Can that help me, or does that just create a terrible gulf between the spiritual joy and bliss within and the world outside? The world outside is not different from that. I didn't go there. But it is that one reality by knowing which everything is known. In that one existence, consciousness, bliss manifests as all of this. You asked about experiencing God with form. Yes, absolutely. Just think about it. You are that infinite consciousness, unchanging consciousness, existence, bliss within yourself right now, within the 5 sheets. And yet here you are with a form. If you can take a form, can't God take a form? Of course God can take a form. So God can be Krishna, God can be Rama, God can be Vishnu, or Devi, or the Divine Mother, can be male or female, can be the Christ, can be in many forms, or can be without form. In essence, but Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta says, higher than all of this is that infinite existence, consciousness, bliss, which cannot be objectified, which we are at our core. But very good question. Thank you. There was a question there.
So if we are all these are all the sheets,
Yeah.
and we are really that which does not have any form. So then, what is the purpose of all this? Is this all? It's a waste, isn't it? If you're already God,
Yeah.
then why have all this other stuff? All this, my son, my daughter, my
Yeah.
mother, my grandfather. What's the purpose of that?
You can give many answers to that. Let me try a few answers. See which one you like. You can choose. One most delightful answer is, when you go to that place, when the little wave realizes itself as the water becomes one with the ocean, then all the waves and bubbles and foam, all of it is its own joy. It's a terrible struggle and despair and problems, life and death, when you are limited to one person, limited being. When you become the all, in you the all appears and into you the all disappears. You are the ground of this reality. Then it becomes your joy. This is called the Leela, the divine play. It's one of the most beautiful explanations of this universe I've come across. But this is from the bhakti side, the side of devotion. The entire universe is the Leela of God. If you separate yourself from God, then it's terrible. Then one of the devotees said to Sri Ramakrishna, it may be his Leela, but it's death for us. So he asked him, why is there so much suffering in the world? And Sri Ramakrishna said, what can we understand? It is the Leela of God. Leela means divine play. It's the divine play of God. And the devotee was not at all satisfied. He said, it may be the divine play for him. It may be Leela for him, but it is suffering for us. It's death for us. And Sri Ramakrishna said, who are you? If you realize yourself as that, it becomes your Leela. It becomes your glory. In fact, it's only when you realize yourself as that you are saved from the suffering here, and you see, for the first time, you see joy and meaning in everything. Before that, it is fear, it is despair, it is desire that is driving us. That's one explanation. Another explanation is the Advaita explanation. This entire universe is not separate from you. It's you. You are shining forth in all these ways. Why should it be a waste? Why should it be a waste? Does the water think the ocean is a waste? No. The water is the ocean. And it's the joy of the water to be the ocean. The very existence of the universe and the disappearance of the universe, the ground of that, you are. Then only you can really make your life worthwhile and you can be a blessing to others. Advaita explanation. There are other explanations too. Okay. Someone must keep track of the time. Though we are infinite in time and space, but right now our time is limited. I think we have run out of time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Maharaj,
Yes.
would you lead a guided meditation, please?
I think we already did.
Okay.
We did the five koshas. That is the guided meditation. It's a very philosophical meditation. Thank you very much. Thank you.